So I would like to introduce Matt Bailey. Matt, would you come on up, bud? Thank you, Matt. Matt, tell us a little bit about your podcast.
It evolved like all things. I got to kind of backtrack a little bit. I graduated from high school, and I took the money from the grad party, and of course you can't be a college student without a MacBook. So I went and I got a MacBook, and I said, hey, this is GarageBand. And I had this microphone I'd won at an auction. I said, I want to play around with this. Let's see what we could do. What could I talk about? Well, I searched podcasts, and there are a plethora of really wonderful podcasts for magicians and for other types of entertainers, but there was nothing for ventriloquists. And so I just plugged the microphone into the computer, and I'm in California. I don't understand how this happened. So
it's wonderful. And Matt not only has a brilliant mind for interviewing, he has a great voice, doesn't he? He's a character, and when you listen to the podcast, you come to love that voice, and it just won't be any other way. It's Matt's voice. And he's also being highlighted at Vent Haven, and he'll be doing interviews on stage there as well.
Yes, I'm very excited about that.
Wonderful.
I never could have imagined it, better part of 6-7 months ago when I just turned on the computer and started rambling into a microphone. I don't get it.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, have a seat.
Thank you.
Tonight, our featured guest for the evening. This evening is an evening with Jay Johnson. Jay Johnson, of course, everybody knows him from Soap, the incredible hit series. In the 70s, and very few people know this, but he was actually the original dancing bear in Captain Kangaroo. Yeah, and most people don't know that. Did you know that, Matt?
No, I had no idea.
Well, and of course he also won a Tony Award on Broadway for his incredible one-man show, The Two and Only. Would you please welcome Jay Johnson?
The dancing bear? Thank you. Thank you, Stephen.
All right, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Matt is going to proceed with the interview of Jay Johnson this evening. Take it away, guys.
Well, Jay, welcome. Thank you.
Hello, Matthew.
Thank you for agreeing to let the 19-year-old do the interview. So
I was not the dancing bear. I don't know where he got that. I was not the dancing bear. I was a child when the dancing bear danced, so...
I'm 19, I have no clue what you're talking about.
As we speak.
So, this is really an honor, and as Steve mentioned, you won a Tony Award.
I did. That surprised me more than anybody else, I think, because, a ventriloquist winning a Tony is kind of like a magician getting hired on a regular basis. It's kind of like something that doesn't... What, do you think I was going to go easy on it? Come on. I have to tell you, Matt, before we get into that, I have to tell you that I called my mother, and she said, she's 88 now, and she always wants to know what I'm doing, And,
yeah.
And she doesn't really understand what I do, and she never has, but I tell her, I'm going to go do a show, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this. And she says, what are you doing? I said, well, this weekend I'm going to do KAX for Cadabra. And she said, honey, I don't know why you would axe a cadaver, but if that's what you want to do, you do that. So I am axing a cadaver tonight. So there you go.
We all are for the first time.
And the other thing is, Matt, that I know that this is an association of family acts and children's entertainers, and my success entertaining children is pretty non-existent, really. The first time I ever really entertained children, I got to Los Angeles, and I signed with a personal manager who was on his third marriage. This was his second trophy. And they had little anchor babies, And Dick had this showgirl named Bettina, and they had a little 3-year-old, and they invited all these Beverly Hills 3-year-olds for a party. And Dick said, we've got this party. Why don't you come over and entertain the kids? And I said, well, you're my manager. You didn't bring me out here for that. I don't do that. That's a skill I don't have. He said, no, you can do that. Just entertain the kids. No big deal. So I said, well, okay, I'll do my best. So I got to the party, and there were very obnoxious children, very privileged and very entitled. And I just didn't know what to do, and I was losing total control of the audience because I was saying, I'm good. My friend Bob comes out, Squeaky at the time comes out, and they're going, it's a doll, it's a bit like this. But 3 years old, the minute Bob said, why don't you all be quiet and listen, and talked, they ran to their mothers crying and screaming. Because he was okay as long as he was a puppet. The minute it talked at them, they're gone. So I single-handedly destroyed the first children's show that I ever tried to do. So good for y'all for being able to do that. I don't know how you do it. So yes. That's all I wanted to say.
That is great. And that's just wonderful. We all have such different backgrounds and what we can do.
Yes, we do.
So the reason I bring up the Tony Award is because it really, I think when you think of Jay Johnson, you think of ventriloquism and theater. I think more so than any other ventriloquist, because you also love acting very much.
I absolutely do.
And we all know Jay for Soap. We know him for winning the Tony. But there was a 7 or 9 episode series. How many was it?
Are you talking about Broken Badges?
Yes.
I believe there were 8, and then a 2-hour pilot, so that would have been actually 10. I think they all aired.
Yeah, that's and it's a great series.
It was a Stephen Cannell show for CBS.
Yeah, I want you to quite describe the character yet,
okay.
Because I'm going to let it speak for itself for a second. They're all either ex-cops or on leave for various medical situations.
Temporarily assigned restricted personnel to TARP.
TARP, yes. Yeah. And in this clip that I brought with me, because I love the show, you are in your character's in his psychiatrist's office, and he's trying to get the psychiatrist to declare a psychiatric discharge, and this is what ensues.
It looks like a computer page from here, but
very high tech for the 80s.
Oh, come on, you've seen this before.
You told Chief Sterling you were author of The Forest, a collection of nature poems by somebody called L.S. Jones. He went public with the information, congratulated his officer for his great poems on the environment, only to find out you didn't write the book.
He wrote it! I was right there when he did. I saw the little midget puking it out. You can put my wooden buns under oath, I'll testify.
I am not talking to the puppet!
I'm sticking up for you here. Get your wimpy butt out of the chair. Tell this meathead to buzz off. I think you said quite enough. Now be quiet. Oh, get a load of this. Oh, what a dissection. What a soldo. You know what you are, Stanley? You're a study in mental constipation. You're a hemorrhoid looking for a landing strip. And you are the most obnoxious piece of lumber this side of the Black Forest. And if you don't get a hold of yourself, I'm going to stuff you back in the suitcase. You couldn't stuff fudge down a fat lady. That did it. That's it. Oh, yeah. What did I tell you? And you don't think with a routine like this, I can't get a medical discharge?
Jay Johnson. So, of course, speaking of television, let's talk about Soap. Let's get right to that.
Yeah, this was a series after Soap, and I tell you, it was so much fun to play that character. I wish that show had run forever. The nature of the show, before we get to Soap, was that a policeman comes to town. There's a big mystery. They don't have enough people, but there are these officers that are on temporary psychiatric leave. And in real life, there are officers that if they shoot a gun or pull a gun, they can be done for life. They can have medical problems. Stanley Jones, character I played, is trying to get off the force. He's almost like the clinger. He's trying to get that, because if you get medically discharged, you get your pension for the rest of your life. You never have to go to work. So he's trying to do all these things with the puppet. The problem is that's not his problem. Is he's got a violent temper, and so he goes crazy like this, and that was it. But a lot of fun on that chart.
That's great. Breaking Badges,
Yeah,
one of those just lost treasures, I think.
Well, I wish we'd gone longer. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We shot it in Vancouver. Who's from Canada today? There you go.
So, of course, moving on to the thing that shot you to television stardom, soap.
Soap?
Now, soap will never, you cannot talk about the evolution of television and being able to tell a story on television in a certain way without talking about soap. That really broke down barriers. What was it like to be a part of television history?
Well, you don't know that you're being part of history till somebody tells you were and you get old. But at the time, I mean, all I was hoping is we would get on the air. I joined the show. My show was the show number 7, and they had been obviously shooting for 6 weeks before I got there. And this manager that I cleared the room of his little kid's birthday party, he said, "Oh, every church in the world's against it. It's never going to last. And so, good luck. Go down, do what you can do." And 4 years later, we stayed. But it was just odd. I didn't understand what the controversy was about. We couldn't talk to reporters. We couldn't talk to anybody about the show. Couldn't mention the plot. Couldn't mention anything about the show. And I remember that the opening episode, we all gathered at some house for a big party. And the pilot was not the show. The pilot's just 30 minutes out of what we're going to do. And it was okay, but it was just the pilot of the show. And at the end of the show, local DJ, newsman, Jerry Dunphy, comes on. And do you remember Jerry Dunphy? Okay. He's got a rabbi and a priest and a Baptist minister. And soap was just finished. And he turns to me and he goes, "Okay, you've seen it. What do you think?" And I thought to myself, we can't be that important to be the lead story on local news. But they dissected the show and they said, "Well, I'm not sure that it's as bad as I thought." And one person said, "It's worse than I thought." And the other person said, "We're all going to hell." And and at the time I thought, this is not your average show. There's something different about this. And since it was the first one I've been involved in, I didn't know how different it was. But we got away with a lot.
How did you find your voice as a writer and as a comedian?
Wow, great question. I think I'm still looking. I was not a great student in school. At the time, they called me a creative child, and that was code. Yeah, and I was complimented, but I found out that was code for dyslexia. They didn't even have a word for dyslexia when I was growing up. When I was in high school was the first time I heard that word, and I said, "Yeah, now I feel a little better." So I was not motivated by anything anybody else was doing scholastically. So I really needed something that was offbeat, that didn't require me to put pencil to paper or figure math or doing all that. And when you think about it, puppetry and ventriloquism and storytelling is all those things. There's no math involved if you do it right. And it's an oral tradition, so it's not written down. And so there was a lot going for ventriloquism for me, and it was something that not a lot of people did, so therefore I could compete with that. So originally it was something that I could compete and I could excel at when I was never going to be the great basketball player or the A student. Then I was told that I couldn't write because my spelling was awful, and that I shouldn't try to write because I was just not a writer. But I would get on a stage and with my partner. I could tell a really great story, and then somebody said, "Well, stories story is just oral, written tradition." And somebody linked telling a story on stage to writing. And then the final moment when I thought, okay, I'm a writer and I can write, was with Billy. We wrote that scene with the grapefruit and putting him in the refrigerator. That was our idea, and we wrote it up and submitted it, and they put it on the air. And Billy would come on and he would say the next day after a weekend, he said, "Boy, I wrote some great stuff last night. Wrote some great stuff." And I said, you wrote great stuff. And he did not mean that he sat down with a typewriter and typed up 3 pages. It means he put together in his mind a routine that was really, really good. He wrote it. He had it. If he wanted to put it into a form of typing, he would. If he wanted to record it on a tape recorder, that would be the way he wrote it. And suddenly I realized that, yeah, I may not be the best at spelling, but I'm a writer because I know all these stories. I can do that. And then along comes a Macintosh computer, and they correct my spelling, and now I won a Tony for writing a show on Broadway. So, yeah. So there you go.
Truly overcoming those fears, those...
Yeah, I think that sometimes, necessity is the mother of invention, but I really do think that problems really are the way that we know that we are on or off track. Because John Hardman, my good friend, and Steve and I were at the dock today, and we saw these old ships, and we were talking about how hard it would be to steer these old square riggers. And I was just thinking just now that that's exactly the way a ship gets to sail into the wind. It goes this way, and it goes this way, and it goes this way. So basically, it reaches a problem, and it has to correct the problem, and it has to correct the problem, but it eventually goes forward. So I think sometimes a problem causes us to move forward when, if we're just in a great place, who wants to leave a great place? If there's no problem, why leave, If everything's good, it's good. But we forget that after good, there's better, and then there's best. And what you always want to do is keep trying for the best. So good is just a moment to say there is a better. So
that's also another lovely transition, because one time when we talked, you were talking about coming to understand your mentors later
Yes.
in life. And how important, especially for people who, when I was younger, I didn't realize that there were such a thing as mentors. So how important in the development of creativity is having someone to guide you, and who were yours?
Great question. Extremely important. A mentor is just a teacher that you have a great relationship with. Every teacher is a mentor. Not every teacher is a mentor, but every mentor is a teacher. And it's very important that an adult talk to somebody that's younger than them to say, what you're doing is okay. What you're doing is all right. It's not mainstream. It's not everybody plays with a doll, Jay, at your age, but it's okay. And then you find a man. In my case, it was a man named Art Sieving, in my one-man show. I really call the two and only a Valentine to Art Sieving, because he really was the one that let me know what I was doing was okay, and we had this incredible connection. He was 70, I was 17, but we had this connection. So I think that it's validation. It's somebody that's been there, done that can tell you this is the way it is. It's somebody you trust. Your mentor, if mentor says that's good, and you trust them, then you believe that you should do more of that. If they say, you could do better, no matter how you feel about it, you're going to try to do better. So for me, mentors were really important. I had a man that I worked for about 10 years, and John, Charles R. Meeker, you were Mr. Meeker at Six Flags. He became a mentor to me in a not so much a performance way, but in a business way. He was an incredible business producer, and just watching him over the 10 years that I worked for him. As a matter of fact, I'll digress to say how important mentors are. Mr. Meeker took me under wing at 14 or 15, put me in a show at Six Flags Over Texas, and then I went to Six Flags Over Georgia, and then he took me on a Dr. Pepper tour, and he used my act a lot. Then after college, he had a place called Charlie's Place down in Fort Worth, and it was sort of a dinner theater, and we had a variety show. We did that. Came time for me to really break away, and this manager I was talking about came to that show, and he said to me, if you ever get to Los Angeles, here's my card, I'd like to represent you. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. But I didn't really know how to tell Mr. Meeker that I was leaving this little show and I was trying to do something else. And he was not known, once you were out, you were out. He was very much a Louis B. Mayer kind of dominant figure. So I went into his office, and after about 5 minutes, he said, Jay, you know what? I've been thinking, and you're doing great in the show, but I think it's time for you to leave. And I don't want to throw you out, but I think it's just time for you to do something. I've done all that I can do in Texas for you, and I think you ought to go somewhere. You ought to go someplace like LA. You ought to do something. And it seemed like he was just telling me exactly the path that I'd already chosen. Years later, that manager told me that he had gone to Mr. Meeker and said, I would like to represent Jay. I'm going to sign him if he will sign with me, and I will split my commission with you. Okay. Now, that's a hell of a deal for Charlie Meeker. And he said, no, Dick Link, I will not do that because I'm not going to be the one to hold the kid back. I'm going to be the one that told him to go. So he literally said goodbye to me and had the opportunity to collect on what I'd done, the rest of the time in LA, and he didn't do it. So not only was he a mentor, but he was a terrific guy, and unknown to me, he was doing me favors all the time. So good people.
That's incredible.
Good people.
Incredible. I think no matter how far along we are in whatever part of entertainment we choose, we always have somebody looking out for us.
I hope so. I hope so. And you be open to that relationship is what I always think, because you never know. I've had mentors that are much younger than me that are just much smarter. You may be a mentor to me soon. A mentor does not mean somebody older. It just means somebody that looks at something differently than you do, that you can trust, that you can be completely honest with, and you can... I think a lot of inspirational teachers call that a mastermind group. If you can find somebody that's in it for the reasons, the right reasons. Doesn't matter their age, doesn't matter what they do, it doesn't matter. It's that trust. It's what feeds an artist, I think.
Yeah, so you talked about the Dallas and Six Flags and all the stuff you did before going out to LA. Is there, in all your years of experience, have you determined, is there a standard way of coming up through the ranks as an entertainer? For example, must you do nightclubs? I know last time we talked about the Horn, before you can do theaters. Or for those in the room here, do you have to do kids' birthday parties and really grind at that before moving on to schools and testing that ground?
I think there's a route for everybody, and I don't think there is a standard mold. And if there was, we would all be doing the same act, I guess, wouldn't we? I mean, if there was one way to do it that was the best, we would all be doing that or trying to do that. So obviously, it is as individual as it is the people in this room. And the best advice I ever got, and it was from a strange source, it was from a guy named Ted Knight, who later played Ted Baxter on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. He was a ventriloquist. Met him when I was about 10 years old. And he said, perform in front of as many people as you can, as many times as you can, doesn't matter when, how many, what there are. When you get a chance to perform, perform. So to me, if it's a nightclub, if it's a theater, if it's a birthday party, if it's your grandmother who really will sit there for 30 minutes, that's your audience. And when you understand that audience, then you understand every audience, because an audience is just people, and you have to understand the people. So there's no one way to do it. When I was right after soap, comedy clubs were huge. They were just huge. There must have been 2 in every town. Now there's not so much of a venue for that. I mean, they just don't exist. Before that, it was supper clubs. People could make a living being the headliner at a club where you dance, and they always had a band. And before that was probably vaudeville. There's always been something where you could find a way to perform, but it has continually changed.
So what is it today, do you think?
It's an odd thing. Today, because we've never been there before, you have an opportunity to reach a lot of people without ever leaving your house, and you're a great example. The internet and YouTube and podcast and those things can reach an audience. And aren't we all reaching an audience, I mean, if that's a viable way, I think that probably Jeff Dunham, that's how people got to know Jeff, was on the internet. And he's doing arenas now, doing pretty well. So it may be this electronic way of being able to make a movie in your little, right there in your room, and putting out your material and seeing if anybody is there. And if people go, yeah, I like that, do more of that. That's not maybe as immediate of an audience as what you get when you're on stage and immediately you know if they like or don't like something, but you're still performing, you're still doing that. But, just perform for anybody, any place, anytime you get the chance, wherever it is.
Yeah, because you're known for your writing, you're known as a ventriloquist, and because of how you combine them, a pure entertainer. And as Steve expertly pointed out at the beginning when he introduced this segment, that this is a convention for entertainers of all varieties, family entertainers.
Absolutely. Somebody called us all people of the plastic arts, and they didn't mean plastic like, something you make a toy out of. Plastic in the way that it's malleable, it is moldable, it is distinctive to the person, Two magicians can do the same trick. No, not the same trick. Two different people will approach this trick exactly differently. And we could all have the same puppet. None of us will do the same. You could even do the same jokes, which I don't suggest. You rip somebody off. But every actor, every performer, everybody is different. And what you want an audience to feel is that uniqueness. You were there because you were a unique moment. And my philosophy on performing is the odds. I'm just looking around this room, and I'm very bad at numbers, being a dyslexic. But however many people there, the odds on these people, all of us, being right here at this moment ever again, or this time, are astronomical. You cannot get this experience with these people and this moment ever again. Now that becomes a very precious thing. That becomes very important, and to not get everything that you can out of that unique moment, then you're cheating yourself, because you'll never have that moment again. And it doesn't matter if it goes well, it goes bad, it goes average. It doesn't matter. It is a unique experience, and that's what we're there for. We're to show our uniqueness to a unique situation, and that's how we all get along. Thanks, Bill.
And it is that mind and that thinking process that created a Tony Award-winning show, the two and only. So, coming from the nightclubs, from doing stand-up in the ventriloquism style, what prompted you to write what is considered a one-man show for the theater?
I always, from the time I started performing, I always wanted to perform in a theater. It was great performing on risers and great ballrooms, and I've done that a lot. We all have. It's okay in the living room. It's okay in a nightclub. It's okay on a little dance floor. That might be a thing. But a theater for me was what man intended for a show to be seen in. It is architecturally, they have focused it so you're facing there. There's no table in front of you. There's no waitress. It's the show and you and the audience, and it's the purest form of entertainment. So how could I get on a stage? How could I do that? So for years and years, I wanted to do that, and it took a long time before somebody in another kind of mastermind group and mentors of my own age came up and said, "We think you ought to do a one-man show." And I said, "Well, I would love to do that. I've always wanted to do that. I don't know how to do that." They said, "I think we can help." So they did. And pretty soon we're standing on Radio City Musical Hall stage getting some award for our work. But I knew that a theatrical audience, as opposed to a nightclub audience, as opposed to any other audience, that show needs certain requirements. And the way I've always thought about it is, in a nightclub, we get to work with about 4 or 5 Crayolas out of that bunch, the red and the green, the blue, and maybe the yellow. And those are great. Those are great colors. You can do a lot of things with those colors. In a comedy club, perfect. But when you step on a theatrical stage, unless you're just doing a concert, they want you to use that black color, and they want you to use that dark brown, and they want you to use that mauve, and they want you to use those colors that aren't just always happy, and they're always just jumping for joy. They want to be touched, and they want to feel something. They want to have a different feeling when they walk out than they walk in. And that was my challenge, to come up with something that I thought people would find in their heart, rather than just laugh and say, I love that show. And that was really the challenge of the two and only, was to find that arc and that story and that motivation. And I found it talking about my mentor, Art Sieving.
So are you then playing a character, or are you pretty much just you on stage? I know it is you, it is about you, but are you shielding a part? Are you playing a defined Jay Johnson, or is it everything?
I think that the minute you walk on stage, you have to work very hard to be yourself, if that's what you're going to be. As hard as you work at it as another character, because this is not normal. What we're doing here, this is not normal. I shouldn't be, you know what I mean? For more reasons than you say. So this is not, we're not sitting in my living room, and we're not. This is what this is. So this requires some different energy than it would if we were just sitting in my living room and we're talking about Super Bowl coming up. So yeah, you're a different person. Now, you don't want to be so different that it doesn't fit. You don't want to wear a suit that just feels tight and you're not really comfortable in it. So you got to find a way to be yourself while you're not being yourself. But I think anybody that walks on stage, if they don't understand that if they're a puppeteer, that they are two people, not one, and if they are a magician, they are a personality presenting an illusion. And if you're tying balloons, you're not just a guy that does this. Here's the thing. I go into magic stores all the time, and you'll say, "What's that trick there?" And the guy will say, "Well, that's a Hyperdolphus." "Oh, good, that's great. What does it do?" And well, let me show you. He goes, "Let's take that, put the thing there, it goes down, disappears. That's it. That's $800." And you look at it, and they have done the trick perfectly. That trick is perfect. You can see that $800. Yeah, I'm amazed. There is no entertainment to that. They have simply demonstrated, you put this, you do that, and there it is. A magician takes that same effect, and it's 5 minutes of wonder and intrigue. Now, how do you do that? Is that the trick? No, it's the person. He or she is connecting with something that makes you feel as excited as they do when that happens, because it's not the trick. And if you want to buy a lot of money and a lot of tricks, that's fine. They're not going to make you a better magician. A better magician is the man who finds, and the woman that finds the magic within themselves and lets it come through those tricks. And that makes us all different. That makes us all different.
Incredible answer. Now, excuse my awkwardness as I reach. But the next thing I wanted to ask about was, we've talked about how you went about winning the Tony and creating the show. This finally exists.
Yeah.
What was it like to film it? Can you talk about the difference between just doing the show and doing it for film?
Well, first of all, boy, I had some real misconceptions about doing a Broadway show. I thought Broadway was the last vestige of creativity left in America. I thought once you got to New York theater was where it happened, where creativity existed, where you didn't get anywhere relatively the best. What Broadway and what New York theater is the most capitalistic approach to entertainment that has ever been devised. I mean, I would rather be attacked by several network executives than just one theater producer, because they are ravenous about what they want and what they're going to have and what they're going to do. And question, or are you just waving hi?
You were the first one that had the first one-man Broadway show, I think, that I've ever heard of.
Oh, no, I would love to think that, but there have been lots of one-person shows, from Lily Tomlin to Elaine Stritch, who won Tony for At Liberty, to Billy Crystal, 700 Sundays, to Lena Horne, who did her one-person show. Yeah. First ventriloquist. Yeah, yes. First ventriloquist. But about the point is about this. I thought that once we were on that road, everything was just paved for you. But it's a constant promotion. It's a constant. We were sold out last night. Terrific. Well, there's another show tonight. Okay, well, let's do it again and let's sell it again. It took me a long time before I could get the rights back, because they had no interest in doing a film of The Two and Only. There was no interest at all. It's a live show. We got a live show. We won a Tony. We're done. Thank you very much. I said, but there's a lot of people that didn't get to see the show. And they go, well, They should have come. So then I say, well, okay. Yeah, exactly. So I eventually wait them out and wait for that contract to expire so that the rights were in turnaround and came back to me, which means now I'm the one that says everything's going to go. Then there was a problem of something in the neighborhood of $200,000 that became an issue. Eventually we found some financing, and I thought, okay, we're fine. But to put a show that was designed, written, performed, and done for a theater onto any sort of media is just an experience I was not prepared for, because what you do on stage is so much different than what you do for a film. And how you look at it is so much different than you do in a film. And what I found out that instead of somebody that would come in and try to direct it like they would direct a movie, I wanted somebody who was a documentarian. And I said, I'm going to do the show, catch the show. So Brian Simon, who did I'm No Dummy, and we were good friends, 8 cameras. We did it live at the Wilmington
The
Theater.
Thalian Hall?
In Wilmington, North Carolina, which is the exact same age and size of the Helen Hayes where we did it in New York. To do it in New York became so prohibitive, it was ridiculous. It was easier for me to fly to Wilmington with all my stuff and do the show there than it would be just to film one night when I was already at the Helen Hayes. And so I'm proud of that work, because we really did find a way to make it a theatrical experience without then saying we're cheating by using camera tricks, or we had to edit some things that I never thought about. On stage, it would be okay if for a minute I would do this and I'd reach down, I'd get a bottle and I would drink like that. That time that you just had there, that's 1,000,000 years on film. That's 1,000,000 years on film. And when you watch it, you go, what's going on? Because you're like this. On a stage, there's so many things to look at. So all of that to say that it took a long time to film it. I wanted to make sure that we did it right. I gave a copy to Jay Sandrich, who was my director on Soap, and he liked it. So it was all right. So I feel good about it.
Great.
But yeah, it's not easy, because you design something for one thing, you write it for that.
Can you, just so that they know, talk about its availability and decide sort of the progress of that and where we'll go?
There you go. Oh, you just happen to have my show, don't you? These were copies that we did that we sent around for the distributors, and we didn't know how many to do, so we just did a bunch of them, but not, just a limited run. So it's not chaptered, and it's not it doesn't have the logo for the distributor. But it's just the show. So you turn it on, it's the show. It's a screener, is what you would get on the things. And I have a few of these for sale. I brought a few, and when they're gone, they're gone. But I'd be happy to, if you want one, I'll be selling them afterwards. The cost is $20. I think when they go on sale in April, they're going to be $26 something, And by the time they get on Amazon, you could probably get 4 for 1. I don't know, I don't know. And I don't. This is probably not going to be the cover they're going to use. It's probably not going to be. It'll have to be the title and my face. That's about the only thing they do. They'll do research and they'll figure out what's going to be best on the shelf. And it might be that it doesn't exist in DVD form. It may be just a download. Things are changing so fast that several years ago I talked to my agent. I had a videotape, and I said we should put it on DVD. And he said, "What's that?" So there you go. So it'll probably be good. So yeah, afterwards, if you want one, I'll be here all week. So if you want one, I've got it. I don't even know what a credit card is, and I don't do math. So if you've got cash, I'll take it. So there you are.
There is a clip that has been set up as we've been talking about the show. So I think maybe.
Oh, you know what? You know what I think this is? I don't think this is from the show. That looks like imagination is more important than knowledge. That's what Albert Einstein said, and I think that's the best thing in the world. It is the most important thing in the world, is how you think, because there's a lot of people in the world that can tell you how to do something. You do it this way, you put that up, and they're like that. What we're looking for is the guy to say why we're doing something. That's the imagination of it. Why are we doing that? Because. And once you explain because to a craftsman, they're wonderful.
It's great. I have one last question for you, and then
Yes, sir.
we're actually going to open it up for just a few minutes for questions from the crowd. What's next? You've won a Tony. You've made television history. What's next?
Wow, I've been thinking about that a lot recently because once this was done, then suddenly you realize I've been working for a very long time to get to this point, and now I'm looking. And so I'm in that point where everybody I was talking about earlier. I'm in a great place. I feel really good, but I know that I'm not looking for better and looking for best. So I really don't know. I've got a play that I've written with my co-writer that we're going to premiere on the East Coast in South Carolina this summer, I think. And it's just a play. It involves a ventriloquist, but I don't know that I would necessarily play it or not. So I want to do that, and I really do want to help entertainers find their way because I'm not sure. I was really lucky to get the right information at the right time, and I know that it was a matter of just being at the right time at the right place. I would like to be a thrust in that sort of stuff, and I would like to own Axtell Expressions before my.
And with that, we'll start taking questions, and I think Steve has the first one. No.
My first question is, you have a magic drawing board in Nor,
yes.
obviously. Tell us a little bit about how you first got those.
Oh, yes, I absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up. My business partner and godfather to my children is a guy named Harry Anderson, who was on Night Court, and I'm sure you know Harry. We go back so far that Harry was my opening act when we first met. Eventually that reversed, but he came back from a magician's convention one time, and he had Steve's vulture. He had this vulture, and he said, "This is it." And at the time, Harry and I were doing Halloween shows at the Comedy Magic Club. Every Halloween, we would take over the club and do something we had never done before and try to scare people. He brought this vulture in and said, "I think this would be great for the Halloween show." And I just fell in love with this vulture that Steve had made. And I said, "Who did this?" There's a guy, Steve, down here. He's on the coast. He's there. And that's the first time I'd heard about Steve's work. And then I saw some other birds. And then the next time I see Harry, he's got a drawing board. He's got the magic drawing board. And I said, "Where did that come from?" He said, "Well, this guy, Axtell down here, he does these too." And I went, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So both of the props, and both of those props ended up in my Broadway show. So they became such a part of my interpretation that of all the characters that we had that eventually did not make it into the show, Nor, who's what I call my vulture. And that's a Harry Anderson story. I said I'm going to call this bird Nevermore because of the Edgar Allan Poe thing. And he said, "Are you kidding? If he ever has to say his name, a ventriloquist can never say it. It'll always come out Nor." So it became Nor from then on. And
Great.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, that was it. So I owe Harry for introducing me to Steve Axtell, and gosh, that's been a long time, and we've been friends ever since.
Just going to scan the room. First hand I see. Anybody? Questions?
Right
this
here.
man
Man was first,
Gentleman
technically.
I can't go now.
Okay, well,
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I just had a question about your theater experience.
yes.
Because the Broadway community seemed to really embrace you during that year of your show. But you claimed that, you started to talk about your producers. I think I ended up working with some of the same producers you did a few years before that. Roger Gindy and Stuart Lane. These guys were tough.
They were tough, yeah.
But I wonder if you hadn't played the smallest theater on Broadway, but instead had played the largest theater off Broadway, you might still be running with that show, I think.
Yeah, the difference, and I don't know if you're probably aware of this, but the difference between off-Broadway and on-Broadway, I always thought it was location. No, it's the size of the theater. Anything under 500 seats is off-Broadway. It could be sitting on Times Square, and if it's 400 seats, it's off-Broadway. If it's more than 500 seats, it's a Broadway theater house. Now, that doesn't mean anything except when you come to contracts. The lighting package for my show off-Broadway at the Atlantic Theater down in Chelsea was $6,000. That was the instruments, that was everything we needed. When we moved that same show with the same lighting director to the same instruments, the same design, to the Helen Hayes Theater, it was $16,000 for exactly the same package, simply because we had moved from off-Broadway to on-Broadway. So we could have probably been running longer, we could have run longer. I don't know that, and we might have made a little bit more money, but we would have never been in competition to the Tony, and ultimately I think that's what they were after. They were not concerned about being paid back right away. They were really more concerned about being known and honored. But yeah, it's tough up there.
Just as a follow-up, I think what sets you apart is not only are you a superb vent, but you're also a very skilled actor.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And so there were two passions in my life growing up. One was ventriloquism and one was acting. And they're really very similar. They're really the same thing. I've always thought that you could teach acting by giving somebody a puppet and saying, okay, this is your character on stage. How are you going to dress it? How's it going to talk? How's it going to move? How's it going to be? And if you can ever get to where you can separate yourself here, then it's just a move here to make that an actor. And so I've always thought that this was just small theater. You know, this was just an actor in small theater. When soap came along, it's like I was blessed. They let me be an actor while I was doing ventriloquism. My God, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I had acted before and I'd done ventriloquism before. The first time somebody said, do both at the same time. And I found that it was a very unique, ventriloquism is a very unique form of acting. It's the only time that an actor is required to think and be in two characters at the same time. Most actors are reacting or acting. They're doing a line or they're reacting to a line that somebody else is saying. A ventriloquist, in my opinion, if they're doing it the best they can, has to do that at the same time. You have to deliver a line and make the reaction and have a good reaction and a bad reaction. You have to have these dueling opposites. And I suppose my dyslexia, being kind of screwed up there, helps me do that. But anyway. Oh, you know what? That's right. You're applauding for dyslexia. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Hardman.
I got a question.
Oh.
Jay, you've been around so many actors and stars and stuff like that.
So many.
Right. A few, just one or two. How many of those are actually ventriloquists behind the scenes that we don't see? Like you were just mentioning.
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I've never been asked. Ted Knight. Yeah.
Right. Closet vent.
How many closet events are there? Well, let's see. Ted Knight was a ventriloquist, Ted Baxter. Don Knotts was a ventriloquist. Johnny Carson was a ventriloquist. Who am I missing, Steve? You probably know as many as I do. Copperfield, I think, messed around with ventriloquism. I don't know if he was a ventriloquist or just practicing to be a magician. Howard Stern. Howard Stern. Yeah, I've seen pictures of him with his little Jerry Mahoney, and he wanted to be a ventriloquist. So there may be a lot more. Those are the only ones I know. But there's a lot of people I've known in show business that can speak out of both sides of their mouth. That's pretty much.
Yeah, I know that too.
Yeah. Now, okay, John, does everybody know you? I'm the first time here, but when I was working at Six Flags Over Texas, there was in Boomtown, there was a puppet wagon, which I used to hang out at. And once in a while, you got to see Punch and Judy. But more often, you got to see an incredible snake called Argyle, who was basically just working the crowd with these people. And it was hysterical and funny and wonderful. And I kept coming back, and I never knew who was done it. And finally, I realized it was this man, John Hardman, who was doing that, and still one of the best puppeteers I've ever known. John Hardman.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What's in the case?
What's in the case? Well, that's a great thing.
I think it's time.
I think it's time.
I have a question for you. Would you like to see Jay do his thing?
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor, Jay Johnson, Tony Award winner.
Thank you very much.
ventriloquist.
And please give it up for my friend Matthew. Matt is the best. Matt Bailey.
Stop.